the Republican debate, primary debate, happening tomorrow night. As we mentioned before, we're going to have special coverage for you premium subscribers that'll drop today. For everybody else, that will drop tomorrow morning. So look forward to that. We did get news of exactly who the 8 candidates are because there was some dispute over who was in and who was out. My condolences to all of the Perry Johnson and Francis Suarez fans. Your guys did not make it onto the debate stage. But we wanted to take a look at this memo. This is fascinating on a whole host of levels. So Ron DeSantis, most of his money is not actually in his campaign. It's in his super PAC. And so he's very dependent on his super PAC for polling and research and strategy and all of the mechanics of the campaign, but they can't directly coordinate. So instead, what the super PAC has been doing is they will post these strategy memos online in places where they think only DeSantis and his team will really find them. But lo and behold, news media picked up on their debate strategy memo that they had posted online, and some of the details here are pretty amusing. So put this up on the screen. The overall plan here for DeSantis going to the debate, according to this super PAC strategy memo, is to defend Trump and, quote, hammer Ramaswamy, Vivek Ramaswamy. DeSantis allies revealed debate strategy. Hundreds of pages of blunt advice, memos, and internal polling were posted online by the main super PAC backing the Florida governor, offering an extraordinary glimpse into his operations, thinking they have since taken this memo down off of the internet, but presumably Ron got the message before they pulled it. So let me give you some of the specifics from this memo. It's just a fascinating look into like consultant brain and the type of advice that they would be. This isn't unique to Ron DeSantis. He's just the one who happened to have his memo, caught by the news media. But this is the way that they approach this. They said, number 1, attack Joe Biden and the media 3 to 5 times.
Okay.
Number 2, state Governor Ron DeSantis's positive vision 2 to 3 times. Number 3, hammer Vivek Ramaswamy in a response. And they provide all sorts of, oppo research on Vivek. And especially they focus on some positions that he seems to have changed, some sort of more liberal sounding positions that he used to hold. Number 4, defend Donald Trump in absentia in response to a Chris Christie attack. So they seem to think that, quote, taking a sledgehammer to Vivek Ramaswamy, calling him fake Vivek or Vivek the fake will be a good moment for him. We'll see if he actually trots out these lines now that they've been made public. They also think that it could benefit him to really go on the offense against Chris Christie, who will be likely vociferously going against Trump because that's, part of what he has staked his campaign on as being one of the main anti-Trump voices. Also fascinating, Sagar, I thought, was the kind of like kid gloves way they want to go about talking about the former president, Trump. They suggest saying that Trump's time has passed, that Mr. DeSantis should be seen as, quote, carrying the torch for the movement he inspired. They provided him with an elaborate script with which to position himself in relation to Trump. He could say that Trump was a breath of fresh air, the first president to tell the elite where to shove it, then add that the former president was attacked all the time, provoked attacks all the time, and it was nonstop. He could then argue that Trump, who's now, of course, been indicted, faces so many distractions that it's almost impossible for him to focus on moving the country forward and that this election is too important. We need someone that can fight for you instead of fighting for himself. And then the final detail here that I found rather entertaining is, of course, they're aware that DeSantis has this like likability, awkwardness issue. And so their suggestion here is, I'm reading directly, that he, quote, invoke a personal anecdote story about family kids Casey showing emotion.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks, consultants.
Thank you very much, consultants. That definitely should do it. That gives you a good view into how brain dead all these people are and how they try to manufacture personality. I made the joke before about
so true.
It's basically, it's like the don the human suit, zip up all the way, pretend to be
show emotion.
Who you are. Show emotion. Like, got it. I will do that. It's like you can't put authenticity in a memo, and that's really what it comes through. I took away from this much more, like, aside from the consultant one, it's clear who DeSantis sees as his main rival, and that's Vivek.
Yep.
He is going guns blazing, I think, against Vivek Ramaswamy. If I'm Ramaswamy, I'm going to be doing the exact same thing. I'm going to hit back as hard as possibly can. These two are basically locked in a match for number 2 spot. And in terms of favorability ratings in Ohio and elsewhere, we're going to get into just in a little bit about how there actually technically is a very, very narrow lane for a single personal rival to Trump, and they both want to be that person. I think Chris Christie is going to be coming in guns blazing against DeSantis because he is the person who he really needs to knock off. Christie, actually, interestingly enough, from the polling that I've seen so far, he's actually locked up the majority of the anti-Trump vote so far in New Hampshire and in Iowa. So he needs to prove more of his bona fides there. And anybody who is actually going for DeSantis as an anti-Trump move, Christie wants to move them into that category. So I think the DeSantis is going to be the main focal point on the stage. In terms of DeSantis, he's going to try and blow off Christie. I'm already going to predict, I think Christie is going to be coming after him on Ukraine and a few other of these issues, also on Disney. Ramaswamy is going to be coming in, probably serve as the main Trump attack dog in terms of going after Christie, but also on DeSantis for being weak and for not stepping up enough on behalf of Trump. So, look, I'll save all my main predictions here and more look at it as I think this is a major two-way. This is a two-way fight with a like complete wild card
with
on the side.
A surrounding melee.
Yes. Asa Hutchinson, he's a nice guy. We interviewed him here. I don't think he's going to have a big moment. Nikki Haley's going to try and have her moment. She's going to have a Kamala moment. If
Scripted, prepared attack,
kicking sideways against Vivek, not against Trump though. Isn't that funny? She'll kick to the left, but she'll never kick to the right. She'll kick DeSantis, Tim Scott. He's a nice guy. I'm sure he'll have a couple of moments, but he's not an attack guy. That's never really been.
No, that's not his personality or his political brand. I don't think it would go well with like what his political brand is.
Exactly. So in general, I think that this is, to boil it down for just this segment, it is DeSantis for Ramaswamy. They're going for the number 2. We also had an interesting ABC News piece. Let's go and put this up there on the screen, where they did kind of a deep dive into Vivek. They say, quote, how Vivek Ramaswamy sought podcast stardom prior to the White House run. They quoted someone who said he's wanted to be famous. They revealed that he apparently was in a development deal with the Daily Wire, actually, for a podcast before he decided to run for president.
Yeah, and Daily Wire confirmed that part of it,
They did confirm that. One of the interesting things that actually came out to me is that whenever you looked at the Ramaswamy rebuttal here, it was just like, he was like, oh, is your source a person who lives in a publicly funded mansion in Tallahassee, as in the DeSantis team? I can only say anecdotally online, just from watching kind of the sparring of all the camps, the DeSantis folks have really stepped up their fire against Ramaswamy in recent days. They particularly focused in on a line here in this ABC piece about how Ramaswamy had told associates in the past that his candidacy could potentially nudge out Ron DeSantis. They're like, oh, Vivek is trying to sabotage Ron DeSantis. No, I just think he thinks he's better at the job than DeSantis. I think he's a more of a viable candidate. And to be honest, given his polling position right now, and especially given where DeSantis started, I don't know if he's necessarily wrong about that in terms of performance so far.
I mean, I think in terms of political talent, Vivek is a more politically talented person. And you have to, look, obviously, you guys know I have all kinds of policy disagreements with Vivek Ramaswamy, though I'm very grateful that he is willing to come here and mix it up with us and mix it up with a whole host of people, and I hope we can do that again. But, this is a guy who basically came out of nowhere and is now verging on being the leading alternative to Trump. Now, I mean, given that Trump is winning by like a landslide, maybe that's a low bar. But, he is certainly giving DeSantis right now a run for his money. And DeSantis had the whole Fox News Rupert Murdoch empire pulling for him at the beginning of this. He's had endless free media coverage. He has much higher name recognition. And that's the thing that DeSantis has to be really nervous about with Vivek is, even though he has relatively still low name ID, like there are a lot of Republicans who are just going to be getting introduced to him tonight at the debate. That means that Vivek has a lot of room where he could potentially grow. Whereas Ron DeSantis is known by the Republican base at this point and, broadly liked. It's not that they hate him, although his favorability rating has come down significantly since this campaign started. So it seems like Vivek potentially has a much higher ceiling and much more room to grow than Ron DeSantis does at this point. I'll just read you the piece of this article where they talk about how they word the "is Vivek in here" just to torpedo Ron DeSantis part. They say he pitched himself as a candidate who could make serious waves in the Republican primary when he was talking to some of his initial backers. When met with some skepticism, Ramaswamy argued his candidacy could also dissuade Florida Governor Ron DeSantis from entering the race, that didn't happen. According to a source who was on the call, in the lead up to his announcement, Ramaswamy would tell several other conservative activists that he believed that if he ran, it could stop DeSantis from running or impact his viability as a candidate if he did enter the race, sources said. And look, I mean, in terms of his public posture, it's no secret he's been very defensive of Trump. You know, he'll go to the mat to defend Trump. He says he'll pardon him if he becomes president of the United States. And he's not at all reticent about attacking Ron DeSantis. When we interviewed him, he called DeSantis, or seemed to call Ron DeSantis, a super PAC puppet, which tends to be the language that he uses around him. So he hasn't pulled any punches there. I don't think anyone should be shocked that Vivek Ramaswamy or any of these individuals who are running for president want to be famous. Like, obviously, all of them have sizable egos. Yeah. Obviously, all of them are comfortable or searching out some national spotlight. And so I don't think, you know, the fact that he was looking at a podcast or whatever, to me, none of that is particularly surprising.
Who runs for office and who doesn't want to be famous? Let's all
Of course.
Come on.
And Vivek had already been doing all kinds of conservative media appearances. He wrote a book, you know, to get himself into that lane, whatever.
2 years ago, way before, you know, whenever his first book came out. So it's one of those where that attack really annoys me, because I'm like, what, DeSantis doesn't want to be famous? Come on. You know, it's like, let's all be honest. Let's put the next one up there on the screen. Vivek has been taking it on the chin recently because he gave an interview to The Atlantic and he said, quote, "I think it's legitimate to say how many police, how many federal agents were on planes that hit the Twin Towers. Maybe the answer is 0. It probably is 0 for all I know." He was interviewed actually last night on CNN, Caitlin Collins' show, and they had a pretty vigorous debate about it.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, yeah. It's worth watching, at least some of it. The reason why I just find this entire thing where everyone's like, I can't believe Vivek said that he distrusts the 9/11 Commission. By the way, that was his first comment on the I believe Alex Stein show over on Blaze TV. And everyone's like, this is so outrageous. And I'm like, well, hold on a second. Do you believe the entire 9/11 Commission? Because I'm pretty sure we've done multiple segments here on this show about how the 9/11 Commission, at the very least, dropped the ball and 100% did cover up the Saudi connections inside of the file. So
yes.
I don't know who out there is standing for the 9/11 Commission as the gold standard for everything that happened. Well, then those people are nuts, and they should do a little bit of research. Now, in terms of the specifics of what he said, in terms of the fact, I have not seen, I will just say kindly, outside of very small areas of the internet, of the actual allegation that there were, quote, federal agents on the plane. Now, if he changed that language to Saudi agents on the plane,
yes.
Yeah, I think
now we're in business.
Let's have a conversation a little bit about this, and whether the U.S. government was aware of said Saudi agents, and whether there was an entire, I mean, I recommend the book, always do, Lawrence Wright's book about 9/11 and the lead up to all of that, in terms of the drop ball, at the very least, bureaucratic incompetence, about knowledge of these people inside of the country, and the fact that these guys making approaches to these hijackers were almost 100% connected to the Saudi government. So I've been very annoyed by the discourse on this as of late, as if it's like some scandalized thing to question the actual 9/11 Commission report on what happened, especially considering we just had an interview here on this show about al-Bayoumi, the guy who made that contact with those hijackers, and specifically his now revealed almost direct connection to the Saudi government at that time.
Yeah, well, I mean, the funny thing to me about his comments are, it sort of feels like he knows they're, okay, like sort of conspiracy thinking, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but it's kind of hot right now. You know, he knows that the 9/11 thing, he got some pushback before, this got him some media juice, whatever, but he hasn't really like dug into the details of what the actual, you know, questions are about what might have been wrong in the 9/11 Commission. So he's sort of like mixed up some of the January 6th allegations with like just general 9/11 conspiracy, and comes out with this thing. It sort of feels like he should question 9/11, but he doesn't really know the details, so he's kind of throwing this against the wall. That's my vibe from all of this. But Vivek is really having a moment right now. I mean, there's just no denying that. I think there's a lot of interest in him. I think he has room to grow. I suspect, based on our interactions and what I've seen of him in the media, I suspect he'll be well equipped to, you know, spar with whoever comes at him on the stage, whether it's Ron DeSantis or Chris Christie or anyone else. I expect there are going to be a lot of people who are Googling his name after the primary debate tonight, who really hadn't dug into him as a candidate and didn't know that he was an option that existed. Now, is that enough to supplant Trump as the #1? No, especially when you're not really willing to go at Trump whatsoever. You still have to have some sort of argument to move on from the guy that the Republican base overwhelmingly likes. Could I see him really, supplanting Ron DeSantis as the number 2 and really positioning himself as the primary Trump alternative in case something happens that right now is unforeseen? Yeah, I could see that. I don't think that that is crazy at all.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's some of what we'll be looking for at the debate. Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.